Hi everyone, this is Ekaterina, and today I'll be sharing with you my reflections and learnings from the practical counseling sessions. So as a part of the level 3 certificate studies, we need to do 2 sets of 3 practical sessions. So we first have some in autumn when we just start with the study program, and then we'll have another set in spring so that we can also reflect on our progress and in the improvement of our counseling skills. And similar to what we've done in level 2 studies last year, we have to imitate the beginning, the middle, and the ending part of a counseling relationship. So you have 3 sessions, and in the first session you sort of meet your client for the very first time. So you have to explain the counseling contract to them, you have to make sure you explain the confidentiality rules, the boundaries, and also really truly understand, well, what is the outcome that this client is expecting from the counseling relationship. So what exactly they would like to fix or improve in their life. Then you go to the second session, which should represent sort of the middle part of your relationship. This is where the hard work happens. This is where you explore the issues, you look for the available tools and skills. So you really help the client to figure out how exactly they are going to approach that particular issue they have, and also maybe other future challenges they might face. And finally, we go to the ending part, which is equally as important as the beginning and the middle, because this is where you bring everything to a natural closure and you help the client to feel comfortable doing things independently, moving on, reassure that they now have the skills, they have the knowledge, they have the self-awareness to really not need the counseling anymore. And in the upcoming weeks, I will certainly record a separate video dedicated to ending counseling relationship, where I'll go into more detail as opposed to what I've done last year when, the structure was introduced to me for the first time. So as I said, 3 important components of any counseling relationship: the beginning, the middle, and the ending. And last year we also did very similar sessions. We also imitated beginning, middle, and ending. However, certainly at the time I had much less experience. And also I would say another difference that happened is that this time we only had 2 students involved in the session. So it was just me and the other student, and we changed the roles of the client and the counselor. While last year we also had an observer, so there were 3 students involved. And yes, in our practical sessions as a part of the level 3 certificate studies, we are only involving students. I think the practical sessions with other people outside our college will start, if not next year, the year after. But for now we're still practicing on each other, so nobody outside the college is involved. But certainly, as I said, there were some differences that I've noticed, some improvements I've definitely noted in comparison to last year. And today I would like to share them for the benefit of anyone who is going through a similar study program, or anyone who is considered to also study to become counselor in the near future. And one of the first differences I've noticed was the improvement in the quality of the feedback we're receiving from our practical sessions. So during my level 2 certificate studies in Stanford College, we used the feedback forms, and they look something like this. So just a 1-page document, and as you can see, they are in 3 different colors, because one would be always completed by a counselor or the student playing the counselor, the other one would be for a client, and the third one would be for an observer. So by color coding, it was just easier to organize the files later on. With regards to the questions, they are the same questions. We were asked about what sort of skills we've used, so listening, opening question, clarification. We've been asked what we thought went well, where we could improve, and just kind of any other generic comments. So you can see this form never really went into too much detail. And also, as a level 2 certificate studies student, when you are just starting this whole journey, you want to be kinder to one another. So most students gave each other very positive feedback, focusing on what went well. And even though it's nice to hear positive feedback, but there's not much you can learn from it. There's not much you can improve and build from. So unfortunately, what I felt last year is that we were giving each other very positive feedback. And I would also kind of clarify that we were often completing those forms straight away after having our practical sessions. So straight away kind of write down, give to the other students so they can build up that portfolio. And another thing you might notice is that we never had a form for our teacher. So our tutor hasn't really given us any feedback on our practical sessions, which maybe is just linked to how the course was organized in that college. But this is something I felt like was lacking last year. The fact that we were just giving each other feedback without the tutor really being involved in the process. So this year we're using a different feedback form, and I will add the link in the description of this video. You can download it from CPCB website, and this is a document that we use for all the roles. So as a client, as an observer, as a counselor, and also as a teacher observer. So if you check that document, you will see that it starts by asking just to almost like write a paragraph of how you felt the whole session went. And what I've noticed is that this year people really go into almost analyzing step by step how the session went. So they kind of start from the beginning, how they felt at the beginning. Did they felt welcomed? You know, if we are getting feedback from the client, they might remark on how they felt, whether they felt comfortable opening up, whether they think the conversation flew nicely, whether they thought that all the questions were asked for the right purposes, or there were some unusual questions they didn't really think were necessary. So there's more space to just generally reflect on how the session went. And afterwards, the second part document offers the client to also tick some of our criteria. So I explained previously, in order to complete the certificate studies, we need to meet 7 major criteria, and they have also sub-criteria. But nonetheless, by the end of this year, we need to have at least 2 evidences for each of those criteria that we've met them. And by completing the feedback form for each other, we are helping us build that portfolio and saying, well, actually, I've met the criteria of sustaining boundaries with my client because I've showed this behavior in these practical sessions and this practical session as remarked by my client. So this form is not just for reflection, it's actually helping us also complete this course. So it's a bit more, I would say, official. And obviously another good thing is that our tutor is trying to also participate in our practical sessions. So for obvious reasons, she cannot really observe every single practical session at the same time, because we usually go to different rooms when we do the practical sessions. But I already had one session with her, and it certainly felt nice to have the teacher in the same room. It was scary, but also the feedback afterwards. It definitely was nice to hear what the tutor felt about me working with my client as opposed to what I thought or the client thought. So that's sort of the first difference. I've noticed the improvement in the feedback. And the second one is our own feeling of being comfortable to talk honestly about how we felt ourselves as the clients to other students. Again, in the first year, when you're just starting this journey, you really want to be kind to each other. And sometimes, even though maybe the session didn't go very well, you wonder if maybe that's just in your mind, you don't really know better, so don't mention that. But as you progress through the studies, I think it just becomes a bit easier to talk about things and just discuss our differences in the counseling skills. And this is something I had with my partner. So we actually had really good conversations after each session about how it went. And one of the things I've noticed, for example, is that the other student was very keen, or like it was natural for them to give praise and to compliment their client and to give lots of encouragement and acknowledgement. And now this is not bad by all means, and some clients would very much benefit from having a counselor who gives them that reassurance, who kind of helps them to see the good rather than the bad. But there will be also other clients who might feel very uncomfortable with getting so much praise, because maybe for them the world is all very negative, they're not used to getting so much praise, and it might actually make them feel quite uncomfortable. And this is maybe where I found myself, because I felt like I was back in school and the teachers were really praising me. And interesting enough, this person does work in educational kind of sector. So when we had a discussion, they realized that yes, maybe because they work with children, they're more used to kind of praising them and giving encouragement. But while working with adult clients, it might be a bit different, because yes, in the end of the day, every client could be different. And what was really nice in this situation is that nobody took this as sort of a negative feedback, but it was just a general remark on the fact that we all have very different counseling styles, and while somebody might work better with me, somebody else will definitely would like to work with that other student because they will need that encouragement. So for anyone who is doing similar study program, for anyone doing the practical sessions, I hope you are able to express your feelings similar to how I've done it, because it really is helpful to know how exactly the client is feeling, and whether some things you think are okay, they might not feel so much about it. And it also helps you to adjust your counseling kind of style, because as we were having those honest conversations, I've noticed that, for example, I try to introduce more praise and more kind of positive acknowledgement in my speech as I was working with that individual, because if that's something they naturally do, possibly that's something they would naturally prefer as well. So you can learn from each other, and obviously if you work with the same student throughout your practical sessions, you can try to tweak your kind of counseling approach to see if that works better for them. And I think they also try to do that as well. They try to reduce the amount of praise because they realize that's something I was feeling very comfortable with. The next thing I wanted to mention about the practical sessions, and this is no different from last year, is the fact that we are still recording them. So for anyone who is considering to become a counselor and wants to start also studying for this profession, please be aware that yes, practical sessions are recorded. You generally can choose whether you want to have video or just the audio. Last year, all my practical sessions were recorded with the video, and I found it quite useful because later on you can go back and observe the body language. And sometimes it's also good to see yourself from the side. How do you talk to another person? How does your face look? What is your body language? So I found it quite interesting. While this year we did only audios, I think people were less comfortable with the recordings, but it's still great to have those sessions recorded. Because of the style of the feedback form we have for this year, it's not really expected for people to write those feedbacks straight away after the session. You can certainly make some notes, but there's no expectation for you to kind of hang it straight away to the other student. So that's the difference from, I guess, last year. So you are kind of expected to go back home, to reflect on the session, listen to the recording, and then write your feedback. And certainly there were many times when I think if it wasn't for the recording, I wouldn't have noticed some missed opportunities in maybe exploring a particular event that happened in client's life, or haven't really spotted how often I use the same phrase like, it sounds like. So only when you have a recording, you can spot those patterns, your habits in maybe using the same words or asking the same type of questions. So definitely, if you are planning to become a counselor, please prepare yourself for the recording, because it is a very useful tool to improve, to learn how to self-reflect, and just to spot your own kind of habits that you might need to adjust slightly to become, obviously in the future, a good counselor. And the last thing I wanted to remark with regards to the differences between the last year and this year practical sessions is that I've noticed that I am no longer thinking about all the skills I have to apply, but instead I let the conversation to just flow naturally. So yes, last year when we learned about those counseling skills for the first time, certainly there was almost like a little hidden agenda in every single practical session, because we felt that we needed to display those skills. We needed to do something with the paraphrasing. We needed to show summarizing. We needed to use closed questions, but less than open questions. So there was so much to think about constantly. And I certainly remember that when I had my practical sessions, at the back of my mind, I felt like, okay, I have like a tick box exercise. I need to show this skill. I need to show that skill in order to succeed in my studies and to get that certificate. Now, this year, what I've noticed is that I kind of let go of that checkbox exercise, and I've just decided that I will say during my sessions whatever feels most natural. And the good thing here is that we have all those recordings. So listening back to the recordings, I realized that actually I am already using all those necessary skills. Maybe still obviously space to improve them, but I don't have to think that I need to use paraphrasing in order to use that paraphrasing. And I'm definitely quite happy to see that improvement in my skills. Even if we think about silence, last year it was something I was really much struggling with because I constantly felt like I needed to fill all the empty space with questions. So the moment the client went quiet, I wanted to say something because that's my natural way of communicating with people. This year, I feel so much more comfortable with silence. So if a person wants to speak for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, I'll just let them speak. It makes my life easier because I don't actually need to do much. I just need to listen and I really need to try to understand them. But it is much easier to listen this year. So certainly there's been improvement in the skills or how I use those skills. And I think it's really motivating when you see that difference as well, just in 1 year's time. Obviously, there's 2.5 years more to go to complete the studies, and I can only see how it's going to get better and better. And lastly, as promised, I wanted to share with you a funny story, something that happened to me on the 31st of October in my Halloween college class. So our teacher suggested that we all come dressed up as it was Halloween, and I think everyone liked the idea. So we had a few witches, we had cats, we had Prince of Darkness. And then our teacher suggested that we actually try to do practical sessions, and whoever was playing the client would need to play the role of whoever they came dressed as. So you might wonder why we're doing this. You know, it's college, it's degree, we're studying to become counselors. Why are we doing role-playing with Halloween characters? But actually, what's something I've noticed during all our practical sessions is that not everyone feels comfortable talking about real issues happening in their life. So sometimes they would bring up scenarios that they just created in their mind, or maybe something that happened to other people in their life. But quite often, as you do the counseling with them, some truth comes out, and not everyone feels comfortable showing those vulnerable sides of them in college. So by having some practical sessions where you actually play a role or play some other character, so you're clearly given a task that you need to be somebody else, some people find it more comfortable to at least be the client in those counseling practical sessions. So in my case, my client was a cat. I don't think that in the future I would ever counsel one again. And it was a very interesting experience because the cat was really uncomfortable with another cat that's been coming and doing some business in their garden. So first of all, really difficult not to laugh, really difficult to stay calm. And I can imagine that in the future, there might be cases when a client will tell me something and I might find it funny while they might be very serious. So obviously as a counselor, you cannot just start laughing into their face. And yeah, this was a challenge. I was sitting and kind of feeling, please don't laugh, because yeah, it's interesting to obviously know what cats think about other cats and their owners, but it was a bit unusual. And yes, at the end of this session, my client was so happy with the kind of solutions we came up that they offered me some mice. So they asked me if I wanted them alive or dead. And yes, I froze for a few seconds because again, not prepared to get that sort of gift. But then gladly I remembered about our gift policy. So I just gently reminded them that unfortunately I cannot take any gifts because we have gift policies, and yeah, counselors generally don't accept any gifts from their clients. So even though the gesture was really nice, but unfortunately I will have to say no. And I don't know if in the future I will ever get a more stranger offer for a gift, but I'm certainly happy this happened. It made me laugh, it made me smile. And yes, I think it was a different type of practical session, but still useful because we're able to still use all of our counseling skills. Whether you're talking to a Prince of Darkness, a witch, or a cat, you can still use clarification, you can still ask open questions. So for anyone doing practical sessions, when you feel the real scenarios is getting a bit too hard, try role-playing. It's still as applicable, it still teaches you something about yourself. And in the end of the day, sometimes we need to have some fun as well. So in the next video, I will be talking about boundaries, why is it so important to sustain them within the counseling relationship, and also what sort of effect they have both on the client and the counselor. As a part of this video, I'll also share with you another practical session experience where we were pushing each other's boundaries, and how, while it was very challenging, it was also very interesting to see our own limits and the things that we felt comfortable with, and the things where people really discovered they had limits or like limitations they were not aware of. So for now, thank you very much for watching my videos. If you have any questions, please remember you can reach out to me in the comments fields, and please remember to take good care of yourself. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.